Hello? Okay. So dear friends, thank you for your patience. I was just saying it's nice to get to spend the whole day in air conditioning. For those of us who are joining online, we didn't have air conditioning for most of the retreat. So we're very fortunate for our last presentation to have Nina Kucyk here, who's a psychotherapist. So the title of her presentation is A Bridge Connecting the Plum Village Tradition and Mental Health Therapy. So Nina has over 20 years of experience as a psychotherapist working with individuals who have experienced traumatic events, anxiety and/or panic attacks, as well as those who simply have a difficult time dealing with everyday stressors of life. Her passion is building a bridge to connect the Plum Village tradition with mental health therapy in a very real, experiential way. She began her journey as a Buddhist practitioner 16 years ago, but it wasn't until she saw Thay during his last visit to Blue Cliff Monastery in 2013 that she felt she finally met her teacher. And she quotes Thay, "Meditation was taught to me as something you always did on a cushion, but we don't live on cushions." The Plum Village tradition was the link she was missing. Since that time, she has been attending the 90-day Rains Retreat every year in order to deepen her own practice and understanding, the foundation necessary to build the bridge. The only way I can walk with others on their journey is to walk one myself. So please welcome Nina so we can stand and offer gratitude for her teaching.
Thank you very much, dear Thay, dear monastics, dear Sangha. I have a whole new respect of what Dharma teachers feel like when they sit up here. Yeah, whew. I have to co-regulate myself here. So I'm just really, this is loud, is that too loud? It's okay? Okay. I'm just really going to show a case study. So this is a client that I have worked with for about 3 years of just how I integrate the Plum Village practice into our therapy sessions. So I want to keep in mind that even though this is like a 40-minute presentation, it was a 3-year journey because it's about healing and transformation. I'm not the typical therapist who does like treatment plans and goals or anything like that. To me, it's a journey, so I just walk with them. And a lot of times, it takes about 3 years before something shifts along the way. So this is just a quote I remind myself often is, my job is just to help foster curiosity, and that's it. I get the easy way out. You know, they have to do the work, not me. So I have 3 rules of thumb. And the next slide, yeah. And I really lean on these with every therapy session. Is the first one is the only expert in the room is the client. As a therapist, we're taught that we're supposed to have the answers. And I don't agree with that at all because I haven't lived their life, so I don't pretend to know. I instantly want to empower them to say, you already know, you're the expert. And I want to tap right into their basic goodness because a lot of them, they don't have it. Using Joanne's display earlier, a lot of my clients are coming totally dysregulated. There isn't even a center point for them to find. So I start that right away by saying you already have everything you need within you. There's nothing I'm going to give you that you don't already have. You just don't realize it yet. Because I'll have clients that will come and say they read all these self-help books, which is like $1 billion industry. And I says, every time you look outside of yourself, it implies that you don't have it. So I tell them they're not allowed to read self-help books. They have to go in, because that's where they're going to find the answer. I also emphasize all the time that this is a journey. A lot of times with therapy, people want it fixed. Like I'll have clients that will come and say, just tell me what to do. You know, they just want a coping skill of some sort. And I always say, I can't. You already know. You just don't know that you know. So I really emphasize it's a journey, not a quick fix. This style is not for everyone. So by the second or third session, I'll know if that person's really ready to embark on this journey. And if not, I just refer them to a colleague who kind of does the prep work, you know, and then she refers them back, and then we go deeper. So my only therapy goal is the journey itself. So this is Mel. So Mel was referred to me actually by one of my clients, one of my colleagues who was working with her. And she just said, Nina, I have no idea what to do. You have her. That's sometimes how we work, you know? And so I always like the challenge. I'm like, sure, I'll take her. We'll see what we can do. And I just stick to the practice. I have to stick to the practice. So Mel showed up. She's been in and out of therapy for over 20 years. And all she was trying to do is understand what's wrong with me, you know. She was previously diagnosed with bipolar, very short-lived relief, several hospitalizations, and numerous, I want to say 30-plus treatments of ECT, which that is electric shock, yeah. Did a lot of self-harm, a lot of cutting, and very risky behaviors. Medications on and off, changing them all the time. I think when she came to me, she was probably on at least 6 different medications. She's down to 1. That's it. Had a real sense of hopelessness, always kept saying, what am I doing wrong? Why am I'm not getting better? A lot of her therapies that she would go to are also Christian-based. So it was always give it to God. And if you're not feeling better, then obviously you're not giving it to God the right way. So she was really told often that she was a failure in therapy indirectly. And it was just causing her a lot of confusion and fear. She had no idea what was going on with her. So in my therapy sessions, this is one thing I just love about Thay and the monastics is they draw lots of pictures, because I'm a very visual learner. And so I use a lot of visual aid with my clients. And what you find is when you draw it and you put their mind on paper, it naturally gives it a boundary. Because our mind is expansive, right, in all directions. So it can become very overwhelming. But when you can put their mind on paper, they're bigger than this piece of paper. So sometimes I'll just put it in front of them, and I'll just tell them to stand up, that you're bigger than that. And it's just a very, very concrete way to start slowly creating that little safe place that I was talking about. So I use a lot of different pictures. I just chose this one for this time. So I use the picture of the flower. The petals is how things are manifesting now. This is usually what you see in therapy, right? The stem and the leaves, that's their habit energy, just like with the flower, that's what's absorbing the sun, and it helps everything grow. And then we have the roots, which is their belief system. So I'm going to go through each section of how I do this and the practices that I was using in and out with Mel. This is this is Thay's, obviously, and I always show them this too, because what happens is whatever their event is, it occurred, right? It started, it occurred, and then the event ended. But their little brain says, I never want that to happen again. So they hold on to it. They hold on to their feelings, especially if they were young, they don't understand what happened. So their mind doesn't know what to do with that information. So it just carries it. And that's where the suffering keeps coming. That's the flower that keeps growing. So with Mel, this is how it manifested for her. She came in with a lot of sadness. I mean, she would sit in the office, curled up on my couch, no eye contact. And I probably should have said, at this point, she's like a 56-year-old woman. So she's been carrying this stuff for about almost 50 years. So she'd sit on the couch, no eye contact, very withdrawn, very sad, very depressed, ton of anxiety. She would wrap a hairband constantly with her fingers to the point where I'd have to tell her, your finger is turning blue. Perhaps we should take that off. I mean, just constant. A lot of feelings of powerlessness, totally helpless. And you can imagine if you've been in and out of therapy for 20 years and nothing's working, eventually you just feel totally helpless, like the why bother. Her habit energies, she was a runner. So if you remember what Joanne was talking about, the fight, flight, freeze response, right? Mel was a runner. She would just get in her car and take off all the time. All the time. That was what she would always do. She didn't know where she was going or what she was doing. In her mind, it was just like, I just have to get out of here, which was a safe house. There was nothing wrong. There was no threats. But mentally, she needed to get out of here. But at the time, she didn't know that. She would shut down, twist bands, cut, all kinds of risky behaviors. Her belief system, and you'll see how this gets evolved over time, is she really believed, I am not good enough, I am not worthy, I'm a failure. And she actually started to believe that I am depression, or I am anxiety. Like she totally personified those. And the minute you do that, it is so hard to step out of that. If that's who you really believe you are, then that's where you get stuck. So the first thing I do with all my clients is I have to get their minds back into this moment because I know there's no threat right now. In fact, there's never a threat in the present moment. It's always safe. Because if there was something that was life-threatening, you would downshift into your brainstem and you will instinctively know what to do. You won't think about it. If there was a saber-toothed tiger coming at you, you're not going to stop and analyze it and go, what should I do? Because if you do that, then you're going to be lunch, right? So you instantly will downshift and fight, flight, or freeze. So for me, I needed to say, okay, just really listen. What's Mel's language? Thay often says that listen to your audience, right? Know the person you're talking to. Deep listening, so you can use their language. And Mel's language was she loved to walk. She walked all the time, which, yes, is a form of the run response, right? But if we can help her transform that and start to see that walking is very healing, then I can use her very coping skill to help transform and heal her. Not that I'm healing, she's healing herself. So I introduced mindful walking right away to her. We would practice it. I gave her Thay's walking meditation book. In my office, I have a lot of second, third, fourth copies of all Thay's books, and so if somebody has an issue, I say, here, this was meant to be yours. And I just give them the book, and so they can read it and learn from it. So we would walk together in the park. Sometimes we'd meet at a park and just do walking meditation together, walking trails. And then I allowed Mel to give me her words. So I was like telling her to put a word to your step, whatever it was, right? To each step, just to keep her mind here. And so her language was she loved the words arriving here. So that's all she would do. Arriving here. That's all she would do for like an hour. Just walking meditation. Yeah. And that just started her to create this little bit of a safe place that said, it's okay, I didn't bring in her breath because as Joanne said, if you have trauma, if you have anxiety, following your breath right away is too close, right? And so I needed to create space. She needed to create space. So I call them sensory breaks. So as she's walking or as she's just sitting, I usually do sound. That's what I introduce first. And I say, just stop and listen. And then just hear the sounds and how far away. And now you have to engage your mind, because if not, that thinking mind is just going to do, right? So I say just label it with like a preschool label, just one word. So if I'm sitting here listening, I might say air conditioner. Actually, it's really quiet in here. But by doing that, then it's like, I usually tell them to go outside and practice this. Listen to how far away you can hear a sound. And it's just amazing how that gives that, they just start creating mental space within themselves, right? And then eventually you'll see I have her come back into her breath. The other taglines, just real quick, is the tagline I tend, whatever they say to themselves, I always tell them, tag on, and it's okay. Right? A lot of times we beat ourselves up. I'm not doing this right, but it's okay. Right? It's just a way, again, to get their mind to start shifting, you know? So all I'm doing is watering the seeds, but she has to do all the work. I can't do it for her. I cannot walk this journey. So I just water the seeds, and then she does the other one. And one of the greatest skills that she developed, that she said was the most helpful, is the fostering of curiosity. Is instead of judging, or just say, you know, what's making me run? So because she was a runner, I never told her not to do that. That was a coping skill that she used. I'm not going to take it away from her. I can't. So it's like, if you want to get in your car and drive, go ahead. But before you get in, just ask yourself one question. What's making me get in my car? That's it. And if she still wants to get in her car and run, go ahead. I don't care. But over time, what she started to do just by asking that question, she stopped running. She never got back in her car because she started to realize there's really no reason. There's no threat, right? So they have to do this. So this was one of the pictures that she sent me on her walk. I'm not sure what you guys see in there. It's like raw shock, you know. But what do you see in there? Yeah, butterfly. Yeah, that's what she saw too. So she sent me this. And she said, Nina, I had to just send you this picture. This was a dead tree. And one of her walking meditations, it just caught her eye. And she took a picture, and she actually put it in her room all the time because it showed that there's possible, it's hope, that there really is transformation is possible, as this butterfly is in this dead tree. Yeah, it spoke a lot to her. So this is another quote that I love to put out with people as I introduce some of the practices in therapy, is that problems cannot be solved with the same mindset that created them. So if we don't work with the mind, if you don't get curious about your mind, if you don't go in to say what's causing this, why am I doing what I'm doing, you're just going to keep doing it over and over again. So as a little disclaimer, in my practice, I also have body work people. I have a massage therapist that I work with, there's an acupuncturist, there's yoga, because I always tell people, I can only work from here up. I'm not very good from here down. So as I'm working up here, she's also doing acupuncture and massage and things like that. So now we have to start getting her to look in her mind. So as long as the walking meditation over time, that was creating more and more space, the sensory breaks were creating more and more space in her mind. So now she's able to really start going in a little bit more. So the Mindfulness bell app is usually one that I use because it's just a bell that you can set a random timer, and a gong will go off randomly throughout the day. And so whenever you hear it, it's just stop. Just listen to sounds. And I tell people you always have to send it at random. If you set it like every 15 minutes, then the mind gets used to hearing it every 15 minutes, and then you won't hear it anymore. So it has to be random. Eventually, she gets into her breath, and the two is the 4 and 8. So you breathe in for 4 through your nose, and then out 8 like you're blowing out a candle. But not you're just not blowing it out, but just causing it to wiggle. So really long. If you do that 3 or 4 times, it actually reset your nervous system. Yeah. And the other key with the breath is a lot of times when people they just so want to get better, there's the fear that they're not doing it right? So am I breathing the right way? In, out, am I slow? Is it a belly breath, chest breath? So I said, it doesn't matter, drop it all. I don't care what your breath is. I just want you to know that you're breathing. And that's what I love so much about that sutra. Sometimes when they say, breathing in, I know that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I'm breathing out. For me, it's not about the in and out. It's about the knowing that you're breathing in and knowing that you're breathing out. And by doing that, it allows Mel not to get wrapped up in the fear of failing, because remember, she already feels like she's failed at therapy. So I don't care what the breath is. It's like, nope, just knowing that you're breathing is, I know the mind is going to do what it needs to do to heal. I absolutely know with 110% that Mel's mind is going to show us where we need to go, and that she's really going to heal. I just get to watch, which is the best part of my job. Then I play Where's Waldo? It's like a variation of Hello, Old Friend. So when things would pop up, her depression, anxiety, or whatever would pop up, the last thing somebody wants, because they don't like it, right? They hate their anxiety, they hate their depression, they hate this feeling. So the last thing they want to say is, hello, old friend, So I make a game out of it first. If you've ever seen like the Waldo books, they're like the hide and seek books, yeah? And so when you finally find Waldo, we celebrate, don't we? It's like, oh my gosh, there he is, I found it. There's this uplift, right? So whenever she started to feel any of her emotions, anything that would come up, I would say, there's Waldo. Celebrate that. Look at it and go, there it is. And that stops watering that seed of fear within her. So it's just a fun way. And then over time, eventually, she can then call it an old friend. Hello, old friend. I love that practice of Thay's. I use it all the time when I have other clients walk in and say, I was feeling anxious again. I said, hello, old friend. Gosh, you've experienced it for years. Why are you afraid of it now? You've survived it for years. I'm not really sure why we're afraid of it. The other mantra, what I've learned with my own practice and working with clients, is language is so, so, so important. If I label something as anxiety, that label alone will send a message down the vagal nerve to tell the body to start preparing, that I think something is coming. And if the body starts to prepare, it will reinforce the message, right? So with May I See, when she's been spending 50 years of her life looking for happiness. Well, if I'm looking for something, what does that imply? I don't have it, right? People do this all the time. If they have their keys in their hand and they can't find their keys, where the heck are the keys? I can't find them. Where are the keys? Because they're looking for them, even though they're in their hand. So in order for them to keep going in, it's like, stop looking. Just say, may I see? And when the causes and conditions are right, when the mind is ready, there it is, right? So some of the other things that we would do is with all of these practices, it was always teaching her gentleness, kindness with herself, which is why the Where's Waldo, the may I see, just listening to sounds, just, being present is really watering all of these gentleness, kindness, awareness that she never had before because she spent 50 years of her life looking for something. So now we go into her habit energies. You can actually go to the next one. So this is a little something that I don't know what else to call it, but I call it the infinite loop of crap. I'm not really sure, maybe I need a different word for it. But I'm going to show you how it works real quick over here, because that's just a really busy little thing over there. Okay? So when I talk to Mel, and I say, at the time of the event, how did she feel, right? So she would say, you don't know the events yet. Oops. I know what the events are, but in the presentation, you don't know yet. So she said fear, a lot of sadness. You can tell I haven't practiced like the monastics. My writing is not, I don't know how they write like this. Let's see, anxiety. I mean, they're all the same thing, right? And so this is what we do in the infinite loop of crap. And you'll understand why I call it that way. Because your mind is up here. Oop, that's not a very good color. Right? So your mind is up here saying, I never want to feel this way again. Right? Haven't we all said that if we've experienced something? I never want to feel this way again. The minute you do that, what your mind just did is label whatever that is as a threat. And so what it does is it tries to make sure it's never going to happen again. So it starts to predict the future. So this is like the what-if world. Right? How many of us get stuck in that? Well, what if, right? It's impossible. I mean, it's a million reasons what if. When clients start doing, I'm a little bit of a, I'm not going to label it, but I'm a realist as a therapist. So when my clients start getting, well, what if? I hand them a magic 8 ball. Have you ever seen those magic 8 balls? And I just say, here, ask the ball, because that's going to predict what if about his, who knows? I don't know. But this is what they do. So they start going the what if. Well, can we control the future? Do we even know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now? No. So when our mind goes into the future, guess what it starts to create? Yeah, anxiety. Right? So ultimately, just to make it easier, you're powerless here. I have no idea what's going to happen. And any of us can change the past? No. I don't have a time machine. I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I kind of wish I had a TARDIS, but I don't. So I'm powerless here. So this is what the mind says. I never want to feel this way again, so I need to keep preparing. The more I prepare, I'm watering the same seed. And then it goes, oh, wait, I remember that feeling. And it's like, why do I keep ending up here? What am I doing so wrong? I must be doing, I must be failing. What? See what I mean? So I call it the infinite loop of crap. It's just, this whole thing is just an illusion. But this is where their mind is. And where's their body the whole time? It's a trick question, really. Not really. Mel's body is only in one spot. Our body's always in the present moment. Your body can't travel. Your mind can travel, but your body can't travel. So as long as it's doing this, and this was her habit, right? She never wanted to feel this way again. So she kept trying to figure out how not to feel it, and the more she tried not to feel it, the more she felt it. See? And then her mind tells the body, I'm pretty sure a threat is coming because we've been here before. And so what does the body do? It prepares. It sends all that energy to the stomach. So I have 3 options, and you've heard this many times in this retreat, right? It goes here. So if I have to fight, it's a very short distance from here to my arms to fight. Or if I have to run, I can go from here to my legs. Right? The problem that, you can do the next one. The problem that sets this up, this is like the vagal nerve. I just separated it. The problem that sets this up is this becomes Mel's habit. She's always functioning from that fight, flight, freeze response. So she's way down here in the brainstem. So she's always here in the red, right? If you remember that from Joanne's talk, right? That's where she's functioning. We're slowly trying to make this a little bigger, a little bit more comfort. So what I have learned is you can help people with all the coping skills in the world, right? If you're angry, count to 10. If you're that, whatever. And it doesn't work. Only through understanding can there be transformation. Because I've seen this so many times, when you really understand something, when you really understand that what you're doing is causing you harm, you will naturally shift. You'll naturally stop. We are not wired to hurt ourselves, right? Every action that we do, you can flip it if you want. Every action that we do is based in loving kindness and compassion. I was like blown away when I first heard that. Actually, I heard that from Mingyur Rinpoche, if anybody's ever heard of Mingyur Rinpoche. Anywhere from, if you're cold and you put a blanket on, right? You don't want to suffer. It's kind of like Manas does not want you to suffer. So every action we do is an action out of loving kindness. So even when Mel was running, even when she was cutting, it was an act of compassion. The problem is Manas is confused, right? So what it thinks it's doing is relieving her suffering. How many times do we hear this with cutters, right? If they cut, it's to they feel a great relief. Endorphins, everything is going on, right? But it's actually causing more suffering. And they just don't know that. So even in helping them understand that, it allowed Mel not to blame herself, like there wasn't something wrong with her. Said everything she was doing really was out of loving kindness and compassion. It was just confused. There was no understanding. And so that's why I've seen it so many times. The way out is in. You have to go in. The deeper you understand, you're out. It's just fascinating to watch. Call it by its true name. That always, are you sure? Again, it kind of goes back to labeling. You know, Mel will come in and she goes, well, I am bipolar. And I says, well, I'm Nina, so, oh, you know. As a therapist, I really try to practice signlessness. I do not get wrapped up in labels, because if I attach a label to them, then that will influence my perception of them, and it will influence where my mind wants to go. So I teach them too. If you say that you're angry, it sets up the fight response. But are you sure? Are you really angry? Maybe you're just frustrated. Maybe you're just disappointed. And it's okay. It really is okay. You know? Same with anxiety. I do not like that label anxiety, because again, it sets up that fight, flight, freeze response. You know, are you sure you're anxious? Where's the threat? So when somebody says they're anxious, my next question is, well, where's the threat? So every time Mel wanted to get up and run, it was like, where's the threat? Where's the saber-toothed tiger? And when there wasn't any, that's what helped her transform. She didn't have to run anymore. The 3 poisons, I use just that language right there, and just help them see they're grasping. Wanting something implies you can't have it. Not wanting something implies that you have to hold on to it. Right? So if I don't want anxiety, then I have to hold on to my anxiety to validate my not wanting, right? You hear it all the time. If you don't want something, it's like a version of something, right? So I have to hold on to that something. Otherwise, then why am I experiencing aversion? It doesn't make sense, right? And if I want happiness, I can't have it, right? Otherwise, why would I want it? So it's really, I play with those and just help them see what they're doing, and then they practice it throughout the week. It's like, okay, where was your grasping this week? Where's your aversion this week? Where was your confusion? What didn't you understand? So it's constantly, it's like, when Thay says, all this is interconnected. It's not like a linear, therapy isn't linear at all. It's like constant little loops or something. I don't know what it is, but it's a practice is what it is. Eventually, Mel was able to do some deep relaxation and body scans. That usually comes later in the process, especially if there's anxiety. Again, you want them to calm their body, but at the same time, they hate their body. So that can get too close, This is one that I love to do with them, going back to like the language. Is a lot of times what we label as familiar, we connect it with contentment, right? Because then at least I know. The mind wants to know. The mind really is searching for understanding. It really is. But if it's coming from a confused mind, then it starts putting these equations together that don't belong together, right? So feeling anxiety, feeling all that is so familiar to her because at least she knows how to do that. And with that, she found a sense of contentment in that. Even though it was causing suffering, her mind wasn't realizing it was causing suffering. And so the unfamiliar, when you start to introduce a mindful practice and you start to help them, there's that little edginess, right? Because now it's unfamiliar. And their mind does not like that. It wants to know. So it will put unfamiliar with discontentment. Right? So I'm always challenging that. So it's really what Mel was defining as familiar was actually what was causing her suffering. So finding life in the unfamiliar, and this is a practice that I read a lot from Ajahn Brahm. The practice is want to be where you are. And that's a very profound practice. It's like what Thay says, just be in the present moment. But just don't be in the present moment, but want to be there. So this is just showing how some of the practices, when you're dysregulated in her habit energy of the fight or flight, the best way to reset your nervous system to kind of continue to build this space bigger and bigger is using movements, right? So sometimes just shaking your hands, getting up and move. A lot of times in therapy, I would just tell her to shake her hands because she was so tight. That helps. Sensory breaks, being mindful of your breath, being in the present moment. Smiling. Smiling is amazing. The nerves in your face are directly connected to the vagal nerve. I figured out this is why all the great masters tell you when you meditate with a slight smile. I'm not sure if that's really true or not. The fact that it's connected, all these facial nerves are connected. So sometimes just smiling, can reset. And those were just some of the exercises, the mindful practices that we do in Plum Village that kind of helps reset. So then the roots. So this is a piece of the therapy that I do by the second session. And then I put it on the back burner because they're not ready to go there yet. So actually her roots were at the age of 4. She had to spend some time in a hospital to get her appendix out. And at that time, parents weren't allowed to stay. So she was by herself at 4 years old, and there was a major thunderstorm going on. So even today, she's in her 60s now, she's still not a big fan of thunderstorms, but she's learning to sit during a thunderstorm with her 4-year-old next to her and just watch the lightning show. And she's starting to enjoy it. So the healing is a lifetime. That's why therapy is a journey. It doesn't stop. The big one was at 8 years old. She was playing around with some siblings, and she accidentally broke a lamp. Good Catholic family. I think there was like 10 kids or something like that. And her dad reacted with anger. Now, her dad was very, very kind and gentle, so the dad's reaction really just scared her. And Mel just kind of froze. And these are her words. She lost control as I stood there and peed my pants, which just made it worse. And it was that moment that she said, I never want to feel that much fear again. And that's when she started her journey in the infinite loop. It was just reinforced by the age of 18. They believed that she might have had a brain tumor, and again, spent many nights in a hospital alone, and she never ended up having one. And then about the age of 10 on, because at 8, she just really went in. Her mom would make her sit at the dining room table, and she wasn't allowed to get up unless she spoke. You know. And she also says her worst moments were the ECT treatments. Yeah. They caused her, for a treatment that's supposed to help with anxiety, she would have panic attacks for every treatment. Made no sense to me. So this is how the roots are made. We have events in our life, and we have feelings at the time of the event, which are normal. We always have feelings. So those are some of her feelings: anxious, frustrated, loss of control, right? Ultimately powerless. But when the mind doesn't know what to do with it, it's trying to figure it out, then we start asking all these questions. What did I do? Maybe I should have. Why can't I stop this? What's wrong with me? And she carried those questions all the way into her 50s when I met her. And then from those questions, there you go. So over time, when your mind can't come up with the answer, we come up with a conclusion. The mind has to find an answer. It wants to know. It comes to the conclusion, it must be because that's who I am. Then we create all these I am statements. I am anxious, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm a disappointment, I'm a failure. The I'm not good enough, I would probably say 99.9% of my clients that I have worked with over the last 20 years all have that one. It's like a cultural thing or something going on with the I'm not good enough. But that belief system then taints everything. That becomes your view. You know, and if you look at the Eightfold Path, that becomes your view. It's wrong view, but it becomes your view. And it affects everything. It affected her thinking. It affected her inner speech, even how she communicated. It affected her actions, right? She was very diligent. She was extremely diligent trying to figure out how not to do this, right? Lots of effort, concentrated. But it all started with the wrong view. So it taints perceptions, how she interprets the world. And this is what's so fascinating, is her interpretations of the world also had to validate how she felt. So she's sabotaging, right? I have to get messages back from the world that I'm not good enough, because at least then I'm right about something. Does that make sense? So she actually felt better knowing that she wasn't good enough, because at least she didn't fail at that. That's just what confusion does, you know? It's like wrong view. So this was another saying that she loved, that we worked a lot with, the no mud, no lotus. So if you turn away from my fear, they chase me. If I turn toward my fears, they transform me. And that's from Mel. Just over time, she started to really understand that I have to turn around and look at it and not run from it, right? The more you run, the mind will tell you what's back there. Don't turn around because that's going to kill you. So to have the courage and the curiosity to turn around and just look at it is amazing. So we call it taking a mud bath, because really mud baths are, I've never taken one, but I'm hearing they're very good for you, right? They're really good for your skin, aren't they? I don't know, I've never had one, but if you read about it, they're really healthy for you. So we just take a mud bath and we just marinate in the mud. So when she's suffering, it's like, good, there's your teacher. Let's just marinate, let's just take a mud bath. Because I know, I've seen it too many times, I know that if you have the courage to sit in the mud, that insight's going to come. But the insight doesn't come from the top down. It doesn't come from our thought bubble, because that's the mind that's creating all the problems, right? The insight comes from here. You ever have an experience when you just know, but you have no idea how you know? Yeah. That's what it is. So I just marinate in it. Just marinate in it. And as they learn to marinate and take their mud bath, then this becomes bigger and bigger. Well, the red becomes smaller and smaller. And this becomes bigger and bigger because she has a higher tolerance for that painful suffering. Because she's starting to understand. She wasn't born this way. It was something her mind did. She had an experience that she said she never wanted to feel again. That's it. The experience ended. She was 8 years old. It ended 50 years ago. And she carried it for 50 years. Yeah. So impermanence, we're always talking about impermanence throughout our sessions, the causes and conditions, right? At the time of the event, looking at everything that came into play. So it keeps loosening up her belief system that it's because of me, right? When we make it all about ourselves, then we really suffer, right? And I usually say 99.9% of the time, we're not even part of the equation. It's never about us. There's something else that's going on. But our ego makes it all about us. And the minute you do that, it's going to hurt. And loop-de-loops. I have to show this because this is really important, because clients, when they start to really feel better, right? So they started here and they start to feel better, and then something triggers a thought. It doesn't matter what it was, anything. Sight, sound, smell, touch, taste, or thought, right? And then they all of a sudden, they feel like they're going backwards. Right? So she'll come into session and say, oh my gosh, Nina, I was doing so well. What happened? I feel like I'm all the way back to the beginning. And see how her mind is reinforcing her old belief that I'm a failure, not good enough, blah, 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 right? And I say, no, it's called a loop-de-loop. Something happened, and you feel like you're going backwards, but you're in this loop. And I say, that's your greatest teacher. Because when you can see the loop-de-loop, when you can apply a practice to it, whether it's come back to your breath, go walking meditation, marinate in it. Because the minute you see that insight, it will propel you forward. So I love when clients come in with loop-de-loops. I'm excited, yeah, I'm glad you're suffering, Because that to me is your greatest teacher. And it just gives more and more and more space. And then the whole time is, like I said before, is just always working with her basic goodness, helping her see that she is good enough. And not just see it, but she has to start to feel it. It doesn't matter if it comes from me. It's irrelevant if it comes from me. It can't. I have very little impact on anybody's transformation because I'm outside of them. They have to feel it. Once they experience it, it's like, wow, there it is. Yeah. So I always incorporate Thay's book, Reconciliation, because I think it's so important that her 50-year-old, so the whole time what we've done is we created enough space that now the 50-year-old can sit and talk to the 8-year-old. So I always tell them to have a drink with them. So I don't always say tea because 8-year-olds aren't going to be drinking tea. So I usually ask, so, Mel, what was a favorite drink that your 8-year-old liked? Well, she really likes chocolate milk. Great. I said, then I want you to go home and I want you to get a glass of chocolate milk and just sit with the chocolate milk and sip it and say hello to your 8-year-old. Well, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? You don't have to do anything. If you acknowledge your 8-year-old and just come back to the practice, come back to your seat, come back to your breath, the 8-year-old will tell you exactly what she needs from you. And she does. Her 8-year-old just needed to know that she was safe and that it was okay, and that and it was normal. You were really scared, so of course you peed your pants, and it was okay, right? She took her 8-year-old for lots of walks. Sometimes she'd even take eventually her 4-year-old and her 16-year-old. So this is a journey, that was 3 years. And then in the end, she walks into my session 3 years later, totally transformed. I mean, I just kind of looked at her in amazement, like, great eye contact, upbeat, she's laughing. I'm like, who the hell is this, Yeah. So this is what she told me. Not this, next slide. This was her lotus. She said, Nina, you cannot out-fear fear. I must embrace and know when it arises, and it's my greatest teacher, that I have just something to learn. So her whole life, she was trying to out-fear fear. She never wanted to be that scared again. And 3 years later, because I can't give them the answer, I refuse to give my clients answers. Even if I can see it before they see it, I will not tell them. They say, Nina, can you please tell me? Nope. Because that's my words. Those are my perceptions. It has to come from you. So I just practice a lot of deep listening. I just hold the space, and I know that if they embark on this journey and they incorporate all of these practices in their life, that they will come in someday. And it's done. And she walked in and told me that day. I think I had one session after that, and she says, you know what? I have nothing left to talk about. I don't need to come anymore. She was able to get off all her medications except one, because depression does run in her family, and maybe all the treatments that she's had too, something to help the chemical imbalance, but no. And what's so beautiful is she was a teacher, and then she got her therapy license, and then 5 years later she knocked on my door, and now she is a colleague of mine, and she actually is now also bringing her journey and her practice with her clients, and she specializes working with 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. So it's just one of the most beautiful transformations I've been able to witness, and that's just one of many. And I just know for myself, my ego, I have an ego, don't I? I do, I really do. I thank my father for that. So my practice is when I'm sitting there and my ego walks in the room, I feel it. The minute I feel like I have to help them and I have to have the answers. First off, the session is a disaster when that happens. So it comes in, I just say, hello, old friend, in my head, and I just let it sit in the other chair, Because I know that this practice, to bring it into the mental health world, is so powerful. And I've watched it time and time again. So when my ego walks in the room, I often hear the sisters in the back of my head, Nina, come back to the practice. That's just like a recording that goes on the back of my head from the sisters. Yeah. And that's what I do. And when you get to see these transformations that I've seen, it just keeps reinforcing it's the practice. Yeah. So that was Mel. So thank you so much for listening.